Hello, hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Grow Wealthy Grooming. I am your host, River Lee. I am working on getting this a little better. I am so excited that we are live here. And if you guys don't know who I am, like I said, my name is River Lee. I'm the founder of the Savvy Groomer, where we teach you to go from being broken, and, hopefully not burnt out. But if you are, it's okay. To becoming healthy, wealthy, and happy, building a grooming business on your terms. So let's go ahead and talk about today's show topic. This was actually one that I saw in a group, and I got a lot of misinformation that was being spread. So I thought it would be really important to talk about this week. And that would be, who pays for injuries to pets? Would that be the owner, or would that be the groomer? Now, I'm going to go ahead and pop out my chat. Hey, Marie, great to see you here live. So let me make sure that it's all good. So we're going to go ahead and talk about this topic more. And I want to pull up my notes because I wrote some notes because I wanted to be sure that because there was a lot of comments and a lot of, I don't want to say bad comments, but people, well, first of all, I am not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be a lawyer. I have an HR company that I use to make sure that I am compliant. And even then, sometimes I'm not perfectly compliant. So it's really important for you to have a good attorney, one that's willing to back you up if things go wrong. It's important for you to have a situation that you can ask an HR professional, yada, 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 yada. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. So let's go ahead and talk about this, right? So let's say your groomer cuts a dog and, pretend you're not a solopreneur if you are. Let's say you hire your first groomer and your groomer accidentally cuts a dog. The first question someone might ask is, okay, well, who pays for that? And the short answer is the business owner. No different than if an employee at a Walmart accidentally hurt somebody, the employee is not liable. Now, if there's a criminal case, that can be different. But for the most part, it's not going to be a criminal case. And even if it is, you may be liable for it. So it doesn't matter if they nick a dog, God forbid, kill a dog, strangle a dog, drown a dog or cat. You are legally liable for it because as the business owner, we are taking on the responsibility of employees. And that's why a lot of you guys have chosen not to have employees. And I totally understand that. And I respect that. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to have to trust somebody. And I always tell this story, and I'll tell it at the end because I want to let people come live and be here with me. So that's the question, right? So the person that nicks the dog, right? And the dog needs a stitch. Your business, if you have employees, should have an SOP manual, which is a standard operating procedure manual, where that person goes in and they can see from line by line what to do, and you guys should practice it, just like a fire drill. If a employee cuts a dog, what is the procedure they're supposed to do? Are they supposed to immediately alert the owner or manager? Are they supposed to just rush the dog to the vet? How much of a nick or a cut is worth going to the vet? All of that should be in your SOP manual. Now, some of you guys may be saying, well, I have an independent contractor, not a W-2 employee. And I don't really want to get into this debate. I don't think it should be a debate. I think it's very, very, very difficult to legally have an independent contractor groomer. And the reason why is very simple. An independent contractor is their own business. So they need to have their own phone number. They need to check in and out their own dogs. They need to, in some states, technically they might need their own entrance. There's a lot there that is very, very hard to make true about an independent contractor. So if you have an independent contractor, but their name is not on the door, you are responsible for that. Now, the bad side with that is if a dog is cut in your shop and with an independent contractor, you can have a nightmare with insurance because the insurance company is going to say, well, who cut the dog? And you're going to be like, well, Susie Q cut the dog. And when you say, well, Susie Q is not an employee, she's an independent contractor, they're going to say, well, you need to tell Susie Q's insurance. Well, Susie Q is not a true independent contractor. She's just a groomer being paid $10.99. So she probably doesn't have her own insurance. And honestly, she could just walk out the door and be like, yeah, I'm not paying this bill, walk out the door. Then you're going to have to pay it out of pocket. And then you're going to have to try your best to sue them. And again, it's not clear cut. It's not, a situation where they're going to be like, oh yeah, Susie Q, you're an independent contractor. Because then you're accidentally going to be, you probably are not compliant. They're going to be a misclassified employee. And then the vet bill you would have had to pay is probably going to be less than fines and fees and back taxes. So that's one of the most important things. So you might ask, what if my employee offers to pay the vet bill? They feel really bad, they nicked an ear, and they want to do that. Well, it would be, again, like if you owned Walmart and your employee dropped a jar of peaches and they offered to pay for that jar of peaches. That's really nice, but you should technically say no, because the truth is that part of doing business is trying your best to take care of your employees, right? So let's make a better example. Let's say you have I hate to say there's not many left, but a taxi company, right? And the car dies while they're driving it, or they get into a car accident, right? If a taxi company gets into a car accident, the employee is not expected to pay for that car accident, right? That's part of doing business. Is that unfortunate? Absolutely. And if the employee offers to pay for the car, it's your job as the responsible business owner to say, thank you so much. That shows me so much loyalty and love, but that's not your responsibility. And you should focus on being like, we're going to rate you up, and things like that. And I would, to me, as somebody who's had employees, I would rather you, instead of giving me money to fix this vet bill, I'd rather you focus on paying, for extra classes like pets first aid, maybe taking a safety class, right? Something that's going to actually help you versus, paying one vet bill. Now, the other question would be, let's say you have a groomer who cuts a dog, right? Do you charge for the groom? Hey, Crystal, great to see you live. Hey, Marie, great to see you live. So again, this is where I advocate all the time for hourly plus bonuses. Why? Because it wouldn't even be a question to charge the client or not. Because of course you're not going to charge the client. Of course you're not going to charge the client if you injure their dog. No differently than if I'm getting a manicure or pedicure and they cut me. I expect the service either to be for free or at a deep discount, depending upon the severity of it. If my son was getting his hair clippered and they cut his ear, or if they were giving me a haircut and they cut me, I would expect not only for the haircut to be free, but for them to pay for my medical bills, right? If I went, I'm trying to think of another business example, but you get the point, right? Of course you're not going to charge the client. The reason you're asking is because you're paying your employees commission, and then you have to decide, do I pay that groomer half of what would have been the groom, or if I give that client a discount, do I pay them the discount, right, on their commission on the discounted price, or do I pay them nothing if I don't charge them? Well, and this is where you guys will hear me say all the time, 50% of zero is zero. Technically, as an employer, you are responsible for paying them. You made the decision to either give them a discount or give them a free groom. Your employee has no control over that. So you should pay them what they're meant to be paid. even if it's their fault that this happened, right? Because it's more about making sure that this doesn't happen again, and find out, were you rushing? Was the dog too wiggly for you? Is this a training issue? Like, what's going on? Sometimes it's just sharp objects and little bodies, and it's just a whole lot of bad luck. Shit happens. I mean, we work a hard job, and it's not easy. Okay? So, what should we do with that, right? And there's no easy answer. Well, I shouldn't say that. If you have a W-2 employee who's hourly plus bonuses, what would I do? And again, I teach the point system. So I would definitely give them their hourly rate, but no, I would not give them the points for that towards their bonus. Now, because it's a bonus and not their pay, most places, and again, this is where you need a good attorney or some HR, that's not going to affect it. It's not going to create any problems with any laws. And obviously I don't have to give them any tips because I highly doubt if you cut a dog, they're going to tip you. It does happen though. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay them their hourly rate. I'm going to evaluate what they did or did not do. And then from there, I'm going to decide what the best options are. Okay. But there's really very few circumstances where a groomer would be liable, and they would never be monetarily liable. The only way they would be liable is if they were criminally liable. If they harm a pet intentionally, or if there's such egregious neglect, right? That would be something terrible. If you walk away, if you have a dog in a loop and you walk away from the table and you go to the bathroom, you leave the dog there and the dog strangles to death, you would not be financially liable, but I really do hope that there would be an investigation into that, because that is just completely irresponsible and it's criminal. That to me, and again, I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer. If you have so little, what's the word I want? If you care so little for animal welfare that you'd be willing to do that, that's a problem. That's a problem. So to me, that would be more of a criminal matter than a financial matter. And that's the risk we take having employees. Nobody's perfect. And we need to be really careful of who we hire. We need to make sure that we're managing them. We need to make sure that we're watching what they're doing. Because at no point are we ever able, I mean, you can quote unquote trust somebody fully, but people are people. And I don't want to get into the specifics of it, and I don't want to get into the debate of it. But there was recently a case where a nurse had accidentally given the wrong medication. And there were talks of people like, this should never happen. There were so many safeguards. And then there were also people saying there were safeguards, but they were trained to ignore them. So as somebody who's been a groomer for almost 15 years, I think it's really important to remember that people get complacent. If you do the same dog every month for 10 years, you're going to get really complacent with that dog. Having a second person to say, hey, I know you know Fluffy really well. I know you've been grooming Fluffy for every month for the last 5 years, but what you're doing is really not safe, right? And a lot of people will say like, oh, he's so good. He's so trained. He's so this, he's so that. And it's just never a good idea. Because it's too easy. It's too easy for something bad to happen. We work with very tiny little bodies, even big dogs, and big dogs, they're just as likely to get hurt. They're just as likely to jump off a table and break a leg, or God forbid, hang themselves. Little dogs are it's very easy for them to, twist themselves up, get themselves hurt. There's just so many things that could go wrong. And making sure that you are making sure these people are following the rules is our job as a business owner. That's our job as an owner. And it really sucks. And this is where a lot of you guys choose not to have employees. But the truth is that whether a groomer does something good or bad, we are responsible, which sucks. Jennifer's saying, how about when the client have been notified that the pet is difficult and reactive? Do you think the owners have any liability? So, and let me clarify, and I can change the name of this. So I actually mean the business owner, not necessarily the grooming owner. So I will clarify with that. So 9 times out of 10, a groomer, I should say like 99.99999 out of 10, the groomer is responsible. I'm sorry, the business owner is responsible. Now, if we're talking about pet owners versus groomers, well, that's a whole different conversation. But as far as like, and I can put business owners and employees, if that will help clarify. And then we can do next week. If you guys want to do next week talking about actual pets with the customer, we can definitely talk about that. Melissa says, you're responsible for everything in the business. Important to be an LLC or consider if you're in the States. Yeah. One thing I will tell you this is that, and again, I am not an attorney, blah, blah, blah. Even if you're an LLC, it's really dicey. Up until very recently, I've always been a DBA because the liability between being in my state that I was living in, being an LLC and a DBA were very similar. The state had a lot of protections in there naturally. My house could not be touched up to $500,000. And you can absolutely be sued personally for an LLC. They tell you you can't. That's fucking bullshit. You can be sued at any time for anything. It's a matter of how much liability you have. And in the case of negligence and neglect, even if you have an LLC, they can still come after you. And the example I was given by my attorney was, imagine if you owned a taxi company and you knew that you had pedophiles in your van, in doing your taxi services, and you took a contract for a local school. You facilitated that. That would be gross negligence. So even if you're in an LLC, you could still be held liable for gross negligence. So that's where, and with pets, the equivalent would be if you had an LLC, but you hired somebody record for animal cruelty or has a known history of abusing animals. Now, we might say, well, that's ridiculous, but most of you guys don't do background checks, and I get it, but it's really not that hard to do a background check, especially not now. I mean, the golden age of the internet is here. It's really easy to do a criminal background check. And most of you guys are not really doing a lot with talking to, how should I say this? I have my notes. That's what I'm looking at. A lot of you guys aren't doing a lot to protect your business as far as employees go. You're not doing criminal background checks. You're not calling references, right? You're not tapping into your network when you're hiring someone to find out the dirt. And old employers really can't say much even if they wanted to. I had a groomer who was a crackhead, literally a crackhead, and had actually broken into my house, stolen my safe the day before Thanksgiving because she knew I was going to keep all of my money in the safe until Thanksgiving because it was the busiest week and I didn't have time to drop off all that cash. So, I remember she gave me as a reference, and all I could say is I would not hire her again. And that's all I could say. That's ridiculous, but it is what it is. And that's it, guys, and that's the unfortunate thing. So, but I can't tell you how many of you guys will say, oh, I have this groomer and XYZ123. oh, they're rough with dogs, they're walking away from the tables, like they're doing these unsafe things, and you've noticed it and you've done nothing. It's kind of like with the drug test situation. You know, I'm not here to tell anyone what to do in their personal time. But if they're on all kinds of, like if they're on coke or crack or meth or Vicodin or Percocets, etc., and you knowingly let them get behind the wheel, or you let them continue to groom a dog and something really bad happens, you know, again, you knew that. Crystal's saying, sounds like a crazy groomer I had. Yeah, I mean, listen, if you've owned a business, you know, you've had crazy groomers. Like if you've had, I should say this, if you've owned a business with employees and it's been a grooming salon of some kind or a mobile, you've had the stories. Like we all have stories, you know, and that's just it. So that's not easy. That's not a straightforward answer as far as like where you should know. Like if you know this groomer is abusive, or if you know this groomer is all these things. Now, what you should do, and what I will say that I would do, is you should immediately fire them. But a lot of us don't feel empowered or comfortable doing that. You know, and I'm not perfect, and I'll be the first to admit, I definitely had a groomer who was a drug addict, and it, you know, and I'm just shaking my head at myself because I feel so embarrassed to admit this. It was easier for me to drive her to AA and Narcotics Anonymous every night than it was to find a new groomer. So that's what I did. I knowingly had somebody who had a drug problem in my shop because I didn't know how to run my business at the time in a way that I could make enough money if I lost her, because she was a power groomer and I needed her. And that's where everything Savvy Groomer does teach you is how not to be in that situation. Or if you're in this situation, how to grow from it. Because now I would have done something totally different. Instead of being like, oh my God, I should have done this all. Yeah. So Melissa Hall said, I said policies at your employee handbook to fire those type. And that's the thing is like, a lot of you guys have policies, but you're not actually following through, right? And if a pet is injured and the groomer is responsible, ask yourself, is it because they broke policies? Is it just a freak accident? Because your policies really should stop, right? Policies should stop accidents from happening. But there's always this freak accident. And on the flip side, you know, did they just break that policy? Right? And that happens a lot too. And if you see people breaking your policy, you have to be prepared to fire them. And a lot of you guys are not prepared to fire these bad employees. And that's actually worse than being a solopreneur. You know, if you're going to hire people, you need to be prepared. And I know how hard it is. I know how very hard it is to fire somebody who's a mom, who relies on their job. It's not easy. I'm just going to move this over. So I will tell you guys my story of a really bad cut that happened at my shop. And yeah, I've told this story many times before, and I like telling it because it's horribly embarrassing, but it's real. And I think that's where we need to be real as an industry. We need to be open and honest and say these messed up things happened, but this is what I learned from it. So the story goes like this. I had a little toy poodle. Her name was Tiffany. I will never forget her. And she was like the crypt keeper. So she was, I don't know, between 10 and 15. I want to say she was like 13 or 14. Like she was ancient. She had pancreatic cancer. You know, she had like barely any hair. You know, I'm pretty sure she was a cream. Like she was adorable, but like, you know, like the tongue's hanging out and she's blind and she's like she's very derpy looking. But she was like the sweetest thing. And then her mom is the nicest lady ever. So the policy in our book was that no dog was allowed to have any kind of handling. So no scissoring, no clippering, no nail trimming, no nothing. Not even putting bows and bandanas on in the crate. And the reason why is because I was always really afraid that the dogs were going to jump out, that there was going to be an issue, something bad was going to happen. So what happened was, and we had like this really weird setup of a shop, but it worked for us. So back where the kennels were, we also had like a little table for a break room. So one of the groomers was sitting there having her, I think it was her lunch, like end of day lunch. Like it was probably like, I want to say it was like between noon and like 3 p.m. Melissa's saying, it's true, being prepared to fire is hard, and fire legally and protect yourself, especially with unemployment court claims. Yeah, I mean, again, that's where I like having HR. That helps me a lot because I will actually ask them how to do it and they help me all together. But back to my story. So I had one groomer sitting having her like end of day meal. And then I had the other groomer who, her name was Marie. And Marie put Tiffany in the kennel, and then she was like fussing around. And then 5 or 10 minutes later, I see Marie with the cage open, fussing with Tiffany. And again, I assumed she was just like putting some like bandanas on or, you know, fixing her bow. Again, this was against policy, but it wasn't too against policy. I was like, you know, maybe this dog with no hair, she needs to fix it. Well, then I notice and she's got a pair of scissors. And I see her do this. And the girl in the where the table was goes, "Hey, Marie." And Marie goes, turns and snips. So my first reaction is, did you just cut that fucking dog? Marie says, no. So I turn to the other groomer. Other groomer says, no. Now, as a business owner, I should double check. But I had 2 people I really trusted say no. And I'm like, maybe one would lie. But both of them, that seems unlikely. So it's a Saturday, of course. So I'm rushing around, I'm hanging out, doing everything I gotta do. And then I make it a point to, I'm just like doing hustle and bustle. We did a lot of dogs, especially on the weekends. So then not that long later, I just see one of my groomers just like blood's everywhere. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, somebody's dead. Like maybe a dog was mauled. Like I'm thinking, I didn't hear anything. Like what is going on? So little Tiffany had her ear cut all the way up the leather. So when she snipped her all the way up the ear leather on this toy poodle. Now, in our policy, it stated if that ever happens, you immediately contact the owner, as in the business owner, or the manager on staff. Did they do that? No. The next thing that needs to happen is the dog is assessed. If it's something that we call the owner and they take them to the vet, if we just tell the owner at the time of checkout, or if we take the dog immediately to the veterinarian. Obviously, having your ear split in 2 is you need to go immediately to the vet. Did they do that? Of course not. So you're like, what could they do? Well, one of them thought a good idea would be to pack that ear with Quick Stop. Now, if you've ever gotten Quick Stop in a cut finger, you know that burns like a bitch. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't stop ear bleeding. And it's probably the worst choice you could have. Except they took it further. So not only is this dog's ear completely packed with Quick Stop, they then had taken soft paw glue, which is the glue you put nail caps on, and they had glued the ear together. Now, dum-dums thought they would put the Quick Stop on, glue it, and then the Quick Stop would somehow wash off. I can't even tell you right now, like, I can feel it in my body how horrified, mortified I was. Because the groomer is like covered in freaking blood because this dog's ears are very vascular. And she's on all kinds of medications that just make her bleed. So this dog is like bleeding, 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 bleeding. And then it's like quick stop and clumpy and glue. It was horrifying. And I just looked at this little dog and she's got like, you know, the cataracts and the tonguing out. She's like, and she's shaking. And I'm like, oh my God, this dog is going to die. This dog is going to die in my shop. She must be in so much pain. I just grab a towel. I wrap her up. And I just run out the doors. And I call my receptionist and I just said, make sure they don't go up front because they're covered in blood, and just take care of the day. Like, I have to run to the vet. So the first vet I run to is, of course, closed because it's a Saturday in the afternoon. So I'm rushing to the emergency vet. And I called the receptionist. I said, you need to call the owner. Tell them there's an emergency. I'm rushing her. We have a place called Ocean State, which is an emergency vet, and which is basically $150 to walk in the door. So I knew this was going to be the world's most expensive, situation. So we get there. Like, I just tell the owner, give them my personal cell. Like, what else am I supposed to do? And again, it was like the most ridiculous thing that could ever happen. Because you're like, why would you do this? Of all the stupid things you could do, why would you do this? And then on the ride there, I'm thinking to myself, how do I explain this? How do I explain to the veterinarian that my employee packed a sliced open ear on an elderly, sick dog with Quick Stop and then glued it? Like, how do I even begin to explain that? And how do I save my reputation? And how do I even begin, right? And of course, I'm crying because this poor dog, like, I'm in my, the dog's in my lap because I'm just like, please don't die. Like, please, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I just felt so bad for this poor dog because, of course, she's just the most innocent, sweet, and I love derpy things. So she's like, she's just all love. And I'm like, please. And the lady's so nice. I'm thinking to myself, of all the shithead dogs that this could happen to, why this one? And not that I ever want any dog to be harmed at all, but it's like this dog was just lovely. It's not like this dog was thrashing. This wasn't the dog biting. This was just somebody being an asshole and harming a pet. It was gross negligence. So I get to the vet. And I say, I am so sorry. There is no excuse. My employees did this. I have no excuse. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And I explained, and I had brought the tube with me. I had brought the bottle of Quick Stop so they could know what to do. So this poor dog had to have surgery to remove the glue. They had to sedate her. And I was like, please don't die, being sedated. And they had to it was just horrifying. And then they had to wire her ear shut. It was like the worst of all worlds. All worlds. And then the worst part is the owner was so nice. And I'm bawling, ugly crying, bawling. Bawling. And she's trying to comfort me. The owner, the pet owner, Tiffany's mom's trying to comfort me. And she says to me, did you zig and she zagged? And I said, no. I said, I have two people that lied to me and did this to her, and there's no excuse. She actually tried to pay for her groom. And when we refused to let her pay, she put the price of the groom into the tip jar. And let me tell you, in theory, you want someone to be really mad and you want someone to be really kind and nice to you. But it feels worse when you hurt somebody, or, I didn't hurt them, but by being the business owner, I hurt them. Someone nice and kind who doesn't deserve it at all, right? It hurts worse because at least if they yell at you and they're mad at you, you deserve it. But like when they're so nice to you, you feel like you don't deserve for them to be nice to you, because how could you let this happen on your watch? So this was an extraordinarily expensive vet bill. Extraordinarily expensive. And when we got there, they said, thank God you brought her, because she could have bled to death. And it wasn't so much that a dog can bleed out from an ear, but it's because of all the medication she was on. I don't know if they were blood thinners or what they were, but like she just kept bleeding. Like I've never seen a dog's ear bleed that much. I mean, it was really, really scary. But anyway, so that was all taken care of. The vet was actually incredibly nice because I just owned up to it. And then when I got back to the shop, everyone was finishing up for the day. I want to say it was probably 5 or 6 in the afternoon. And the way I did everything, so that way people wouldn't leave early on a Saturday, is that I gave out tips. We all pooled tips, and that at the end of a Saturday, after all the dogs were gone, after everything was cleaned, after the drawer was finished, that's when we would do the tips for the entire week. It was Saturday after everything was done. So everyone stayed, because if you want to wait till the next day you work, you can wait till then. You can come in and we'll give you your money. But we don't calculate tips till the end of the week, which at that point was Saturday. Sundays were cat days, which I generally did. So that was, no one worked except for me on those days. So Saturday was the end of the day. So Marie, and I can't remember the other groomer's name, but I will never forget Marie, because I know that was her choice and her decision. And it just shocked me so much. I will never forget that woman. I asked them why. The first thing I asked them is why. You could have told me it would have been bad. I would have rushed her. It was bad enough you broke protocol. It was bad enough that, you hurt this dog. But to take it that step further, not just one step. If they had quick stopped her ear and washed it off, I would have been pissed. But I'm like, that I would have blamed me and been like, you know what? At the time, it was a lot harder to get hands-on CPR. We're talking 10 years ago. Now it's a lot easier. I would have been like, okay, I need to make it a point to have all of my employees either pay someone to come or do something. That way they understand how to stop bleeding and things like that. But the super glue, I should say the soft paw glue, the glue, that means you are trying to lie and not tell the owner and not tell me. And that's just wrong. It's wrong because if a pet gets hurt, we're responsible. I mean, and trust me, my own I've had labs forever. And even my own standard poodle. I mean, I have definitely used liquid bandage on my own personal dogs. I'm not gonna lie about that. I had a Chessie. I mean, I've had labs and Chessies and retrievers that go swimming in the ocean. They cut their foot open. You stop it up. You get it home. You put some of that on it. You wrap it up. Definitely done that. My standard poodle she's got a full tail. She's definitely whacked her tail hard enough that at the end just need a little doop doop. Stop it up. As somebody who's been in the horse industry for a while too, like there are some things that you do in your personal animals that you would just never do on somebody else's animal. It's like kids, right? I've definitely done things with my son that I would never tell another parent to do because, he's my kid. I take the liability. I take the responsibility. They didn't really have a good answer. And I think what shocked me most is that they weren't really sorry. They justified their actions and they tried to excuse them. And I'll just never forget thinking to myself, how it's not that it didn't matter to them, but the weight of the responsibility of being a business owner really fell on my shoulders that day. And they were both great groomers, and they were both really nice people. And I really didn't want to fire them. And I even said to the other woman who wasn't Marie, I said, give me a reason to not fire you, please. And she gave me a whole lot of reasons that, I'm a power groomer, I'm booked, we were at the time, we were booked out for weeks. What are you going to do without me? Da, 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 da. And again, I have definitely, in the beginning of my business, my grooming business career, kept people I should have never kept. But this was a point where I said, I don't care. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. And, we had to groom that dog for free for, I think, like 6 months or so because the dog needed help. I mean, it was just, whatever she needed, we were there. But I had to pay that vet bill, and it was extraordinarily expensive. And if you've never had to put in a claim, you will know that, you really don't want to put claims in. It's better to just pay out of pocket because they'll cancel your insurance. And you need your insurance for like really egregious things. So this, I think, was like $5,000 or $6,000, and I paid out of pocket, mostly because I figured, God forbid, the time I want insurance is if a dog, God forbid, passes away, or there's a situation where I do need that separation. And I ended up using it actually on a dog that, had scratched his own eye. It was one of those dogs, like the owner, you say to them, like, don't let your dog rub his own eye. He rubbed his eye. He ended up like puncturing his eye, and I used my insurance on that, and I'm glad I did because they were fighting with the insurance company because they wanted like an ophthalmologist, and they wanted this, and then they wanted to be reimbursed for a new dog, and like this craziness. I'm like, here you go, insurance company, best of luck. But yeah, I mean, that's the tough part, is that the business owner, you're responsible. I did nothing wrong. I had the policies in place, and yet it was completely my financial and ultimately all of my responsibility. And I'm really lucky that that owner was really kind and nice and generous. And I'm really lucky that I did not do that in the time of TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. Even YouTube. I feel like YouTube was around, but YouTube really wasn't a thing. I can't even imagine. So that's my story, guys. And I know a lot of you guys have those stories. So if you have employees, make sure that you understand that you're responsible. If they harm a dog, even if you did nothing wrong, you are still responsible. And they could be the best employees and do shit you don't know about. I would have never, if that dog had not kept bleeding, we would have noticed quick stop. Like if they had just super glued that, no, that's not true. If it had been an injury that dog would have been satisfied with, right? If it would have been an injury that would have been hard to see, that dog might have gone home. And that's terrifying. Can't have people like that. It was really hard to lose 2 full-time groomers, but I had to do it, right? So that's all I want to say on this. I really appreciate you guys being here. This is what we were talking about today. Who pays for injuries, owner or groomer? So I'm actually going to change this thumbnail to about owners or employees. And then if you guys want to talk about the owners, the actual dog owners next week, pet owners, I'd love to talk about that. So I think that'd be really fun. If you guys want to do that, let me know in the comments section. If you don't, that's okay too. We'll do whatever you guys want to do. I'm happy with it. Now, if you guys want to continue this conversation, I highly suggest that you hop into my free Facebook group called Savvy Pet Professionals. I just want to make sure we're still live one of those days. You can just hop in. We talk about personal finance, business, and lifestyle. If you guys have not already seen, I do have a new podcast, Grady Bitch, where groomers stop apologizing for charging what they're worth. We are on episode 2. I'm really happy about that. I'm not going to lie. I am really excited that we're going to be doing this and just having conversations. What's awesome about the podcast, it is more condensed content. So for those of you guys that are like, oh, I don't want to watch a whole live show, well, it's okay. You can hop on the podcast and we're going to have much more condensed, classes. Now, I also want to point out, if I can do this correctly, I know. I'm like, it's always hard. Like I need a better plan. So I also want to let you guys know about our Savvy Groomer business boot camp, which is launching officially on the 4th of April. Now you can join now. You're going to go to savvygroomer.com/bootcamp. There you can join. We're going to teach you guys how to turn your business around, get healthy, wealthy, and happy. And a lot of you guys are doing exactly what you're told. And the way we're going to do this, I'm actually going to slide right down to what's inside. So week 1 is a no-fail foundation. We're going to look at your business model from a financial perspective to make sure you've set up enough income. We're going to make sure the logistics work, as well as your physical health and making sure you have the lifestyle you want. We're going to make sure you are catering to your emotional health, right? Getting ideal clients that love working with, satisfy your personal needs and goals, and come home feeling fulfilled and purposeful. Week 2, we're going to deal with your ultimate master plan. We're going to have a clear plan to transition, if you guys want to choose that, right? And set yourself up for the future. We're going to figure out who you want to be and what you want to be. We're going to create long-term goals and your finances to support your desired lifestyle, travel, home buying, and family desires. We're also going to talk about an exit strategy to run your business on autopilot, because grooming till you die is not an option. Week 3, we're going to do some savvy success systems. I love my alliteration. So we're going to dive into how clients will find you and how you want them to find you, right? We're going to create the customer journey that you want them to experience, including the way you begin your relationship, healthy boundaries, and then, of course, how to educate them and get them to commit to you. We're also going to organize our clients and create your follow-up method in an easy way to stay consistently. Week 4, we're going to do some badass branding and marketing. We're going to review your branding and tweak it to attract your soulmate clients and ensure your brand presentation is on point. We're going to get clear on your social media strategy, your consistency, how it gets executed, and show off your talents. And we're going to make sure that you're aligned with the people you want and that you're happy. We're also going to have weekly live classes. So on Mondays, we're going to be there live. And on Thursday, I'm also going to be doing an extra hour. We're going to be live and have some group mentoring. While it's live, you're also going to have a network of other savvy groomers here. We're going to have we're going to have a Facebook group that you can ask for questions. We're going to have lots of professional tools and tips. That's me. You know me. Lots of people like me. So enrollment closes in less than a week, guys. So we are going to be going live on next Monday. So I'd love to see you guys in here with me. So the way to go is either with our pay ones for $5.99. It includes everything. Now, if you want an extra 3 hours of one-on-one coaching, it is only $1,000, guys. 1 hour of coaching with me is $400. So do the math. 400 times 3 is less than $1,000. Also, because this is the very first time we are running this class, we are offering a bonus if you buy before Monday. You will get a 1 hour one-on-one coaching for free. And that is my gift for you to take on a class that I know you're not sure about. And it's okay. I don't expect you guys to necessarily trust me. I'm going to give you a bonus to show you all of that value. So there's lots of questions here if you want to do it. You know, our goal is to make your business fucking awesome. So that is savvygroomer.com/bootcamp. I'm really excited to see you guys there. I worked really hard on this class, and it took longer than I expected to create, but I want to make sure that you guys have a solid fundamental. And people keep asking me, how do I make sure my business is the business I want? And this is the class for that. You know, maybe you've gotten enough money, or, you know, maybe you have a business that you're like, okay, so far so good, but what do I want? This is the class for you. I'm really excited. First runs are always smaller classes. So if you want more one-on-one time to ask questions, now is the time to join. When we run this live for a second time, it's the same as Price Increase Masterclass. Price Increase Masterclass, the first run we did, we only sold 9. And the people that were there had a nice, small, tight-knit group, and it was awesome for them because they were able to get a lot of one-on-one time. The next live we did had 25. Now, that's still a smaller class, right? It's not 100 people. It's not like a trade show. But I would rather let you guys get in on the ground floor, get to do this class, get to know more about you, and get that one-on-one coaching. It's a godsend. Okay, so I want to thank you guys so much for being here. I love coming live. I'm not going to lie. I'm a big fan of it. Jennifer's saying, I'd love to hear the additional conversation. Okay, great. So I think doing it with pet owners will be next week, and we'll go from there. All right, guys. So I will see you next week. And as always, happy grooming.